The chamber was built to make visitors feel small. It worked. Marcus Webb stood at the center of the Grand Tribunal, a sphere carved from the heart of a dead star. The walls stretched upward into darkness, filled with floating platforms where representatives of 8,000 alien species watched in silence. Some had scales. Some had tentacles. Some existed as clouds of living light. All of them stared at the 7 humans who had dared to enter this place. Marcus was 68 years old. He had spent his life teaching history at a small university in England. He had never imagined standing before the most powerful governing body in the galaxy. But here he was, wearing a simple gray uniform, his hands steady despite the fear that twisted in his stomach. High Arbiter Thessalon floated above the assembly. A being was made of living mercury, shifting and flowing like a silver river given thought. It had served the Council for 40,000 years. It had seen empires rise and fall. It had never seen a species like humanity. Species designation human, the Arbiter spoke. Its voice filled the chamber without effort, translated instantly into every known language. You stand accused of destroying a registered Dominion vessel. 412 crew members died. The Dominion demands punishment. Behind Marcus, Lieutenant Nadia Okonkwo clenched her fists. She was the pilot who had fired the shots that destroyed the Dominion scout. She had done it to save the survivors of a research station. She had done it because the Dominion had given her no choice. The Dominion representative rose from his platform. Ambassador Korath was massive, an insectoid creature wrapped in ceremonial armor that gleamed like polished bone. His compound eyes fixed on the humans with open hatred. The Dominion controlled a third of the galaxy. Their fleets numbered in the millions. They had never lost a war. The humans entered restricted space, Korath announced. His clicking speech became cold words through his translator. They ignored warnings. They fired on our vessel without provocation. The penalty for such crimes is clear. Their world must burn. The gallery rumbled with approval. Many species had suffered under Dominion rule. Many more feared them. None wanted to be seen defending an unknown species against such power. Marcus raised his hand. The simple gesture silenced the chamber. Even the Arbiter paused. "Honored Council," Marcus said. His voice was calm, measured, the voice of a man who had spent decades teaching students to think clearly. "We did not fire first. We responded to an unprovoked attack on a civilian research vessel. 132 scientists died that day. Among them was my daughter." He let the words hang in the air. The Dominion scout fired on unarmed humans studying an anomaly in what we believed was unclaimed space. When our people tried to escape, the Dominion executed them in their pods. Then they sent a false distress signal to hide their crime. Ambassador Korath's mandibles clicked furiously. "Lies. The primitive species seeks to escape justice through deception. Then let the evidence speak." Nadia stepped forward and activated a small device. A holographic recording flooded the chamber. It showed the Dominion vessel opening fire without warning. It showed escape pods being targeted and destroyed. It showed the falsified transmission being broadcast while human bodies floated in the void. The recording had been recovered from Nadia's fighter. The encryption had been considered unbreakable. Humanity had broken it in 3 months. The Arbiter's mercury form rippled with what might have been surprise. "Species designation human. How did you decrypt Dominion military encoding?" Marcus allowed himself the smallest smile. "We are a young species, High Arbiter. Young enough to believe that impossible things are merely difficult." For the first time, whispers filled the chamber. Not of fear or anger, but of something else. Curiosity, interest. "There is more," Marcus continued. "The anomaly our scientists were studying. The one the Dominion killed them to protect. We know what it is. He turned to face the entire assembly. "It is a ship, an ancient ship buried on our moon for 2 million years. It belongs to the architects." The silence that followed was absolute. The architects were legends, gods to most galactic species. They had built the hyperspace lanes that connected the stars. They had seeded life across 1,000 worlds. And they had vanished 3 million years ago, leaving behind only questions. "That ship," Marcus said, "has been waiting. And for the past 15 years, one of our people has been visiting it every single week." The story began long before Marcus stood in that chamber. It began with a man named Thomas Reed. Thomas was 34 years old when he found the ship. He worked as an archaeologist for the Earth-Moon Survey Commission, studying craters and collecting samples that no one else cared about. He had no family. He had few friends. He had only his work and a quiet loneliness that he had learned to carry like an old wound. The energy readings came from Crater Daedalus on the far side of the moon. Strange signals that his instruments could not explain. Against all protocol, Thomas went to investigate alone. What he found changed everything. The ship was massive, nearly 8 kilometers long, buried beneath lunar dust and ancient ice. Its hull was made of materials that did not exist in any database. Its design followed no known engineering principles. It was clearly alien. It was clearly old beyond measure. Thomas should have reported it immediately. The discovery would have made him famous. It would have changed human history overnight. Instead, he kept it secret. He could not explain why, even to himself. Something about the ship felt sacred. Something about it felt lonely. 2 million years of silence in the cold darkness of space. The thought of scientists swarming over it, cutting it apart, studying it like a dead animal seemed wrong. So Thomas visited every week. He descended into the crater and entered the ship through a breach in its hull. The interior was dark and impossibly cold. Nothing functioned. Nothing responded to his presence. But Thomas felt something there. A presence, dormant but aware, like a dreamer lost in endless sleep. He brought gifts. A flower preserved in crystal. Music recordings. Photographs of Earth, of sunsets and oceans and children playing in parks. He talked to the ship as if it were a person, telling it about humanity. Their wars and their art, their cruelty and their kindness. Their endless capacity for both destruction and love. 15 years passed. Thomas grew older. His hair thinned. His joints ached. He never married, never advanced in his career, never sought recognition for what he knew. The other lunar workers thought he was strange. Harmless, but odd. A man who took long walks in empty craters and talked to himself. They felt sorry for him sometimes. None of them suspected the truth. On his 780th visit, Thomas placed a recording of a child singing on what he called the altar. It was a raised platform in what might have been a control room. He had left hundreds of offerings there over the years. This time, something changed. A single light blinked on. Then another. Then 1,000 more, spreading through the ancient vessel like fire through dry grass. And a voice spoke. Neither male nor female. Speaking a language that had died before Earth's sun was born. But somehow, impossibly, Thomas understood. Finally, the voice said, "You came. You kept coming. After all this time, you were the one." Thomas fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. The ship was awake, and it had been listening all along. Light spread through corridors that had been dark for 2 million years. Systems hummed to life. Screens flickered with symbols that predated every civilization in the known galaxy. Thomas Reed stood in the center of it all, his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. "You are Thomas Reed," the voice said. It spoke English now, perfect and clear. 15 years of weekly conversations had taught it every word, every phrase, every meaning. You have been faithful. We are grateful. Thomas struggled to breathe. What are you? What is this place? I am the vessel eternal, the last ship of the architects. I was left here to wait. Wait for what? For someone worthy. For a species that would visit not out of greed or conquest, but out of curiosity and kindness. You brought flowers, Thomas Reed. You brought the songs of children. No other species in 3 million years has done such a thing. Thomas sank to his knees. The weight of those words pressed down on him like a physical force. 3 million years. Countless species had risen and fallen across the galaxy. Wars had been fought. Empires had crumbled. And all that time, this ship had waited in silence. I did not know you could hear me, Thomas whispered. That is precisely why you are worthy. The vessel eternal explained its purpose. The architects had not simply vanished. They had evolved beyond physical form, transcending this dimension to explore realities that younger species could not even imagine. But before they left, they had seeded the galaxy with life. They had built the hyperspace lanes. They had created a foundation for civilizations to grow, and they had left behind a test. The ship contained everything the architects had ever learned. Technology that could cross the galaxy in hours instead of months. Energy drawn from the space between dimensions. Weapons capable of destroying stars. Medical knowledge that could extend life for thousands of years. Not all of it was waiting for an inheritor. We knew that eventually one species would prove itself, the vessel said. Not through strength or intelligence. Those traits are common. We looked for something rarer. Compassion given freely, without hope of reward. Kindness offered to those who could never repay it. Why me? Thomas asked. Why did I pass the test? Because you believed I was dead. You thought I was nothing but metal and silence. And still you came. Still you brought gifts. Still you spoke to me as if I mattered. That is the trait we sought. That is what makes a species worthy of our legacy. Thomas thought of all those years. The long walks across the lunar surface. The hours spent talking to what he believed was an empty tomb. He had never expected anything. He had simply thought that no one should be alone. You must tell your people, the vessel said. But you must also understand the danger. Others know about me. The Dominion discovered my existence 6,000 years ago. They have been waiting, preparing, planning to claim me for themselves. The Dominion killed our scientists. Yes, they feared your people would find me first. They were right to fear. Now that I am awake, they will come. They will try to take me. They will try to destroy you. Thomas stood. His legs trembled, but his voice was steady. What do I do? Contact your leaders. Tell them the truth. And prepare for what comes next. Director Patricia Cole ran Earth's space program from a cramped office in Geneva. She had spent 30 years building humanity's presence in space, fighting for every budget increase, celebrating every small victory. She had always believed that humanity would someday reach the stars. She had never imagined the stars would reach back. The message arrived on every secure channel simultaneously. Thomas Reed's face appeared on her screen, pale and exhausted, but alive with something she had never seen before. Hope, wonder, terror. Director, Thomas said, I need you to listen carefully. Everything we thought we knew about the galaxy is wrong. Cole listened. As Thomas spoke, as the evidence mounted, as the impossible became undeniable, she felt the foundations of her world shift beneath her feet, and then the ship rose. The vessel, eternal, broke free from the lunar surface for the first time in 2 million years. Its emergence was visible from Earth, a second sunrise blooming on the dark side of the moon. Billions of people looked up and saw something they could not explain. The ship positioned itself in orbit, its hull catching the sunlight like a monument to a civilization humanity had never known. World governments panicked. Military forces mobilized without clear targets. Religious leaders proclaimed signs and wonders. Scientists demanded explanations that no one could provide. And then the Dominion arrived. 17,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace, surrounding Earth's solar system like a noose tightening around a throat. They blocked every escape route, jammed every communication that tried to reach beyond the system's edge. Ambassador Korath's face appeared on every screen on Earth. The artifact belongs to the Dominion by right of discovery, he announced. Surrender it and all research materials. In exchange, your species will be permitted to survive as a labor resource. Resist, and your planet will burn. Director Cole stared at the fleet displayed on her tactical screens. 17,000 ships. Earth had barely managed to build a dozen capable of reaching the moon. The math was simple and brutal. How long do we have? She asked. Thomas's voice came through the communication link. Hours, maybe less. But the vessel says there is another way. What way? We need to reach the Galactic Council. We need to present our case before they can act. The Council does not even know we exist. They will soon. The architects left something else, Director. Something the Dominion never found. Thomas paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of history itself. They left humanity a seat on the Council. A seat that has been empty for 3 million years, waiting for the species that passed their test. We did not just inherit technology. We inherited a voice in galactic affairs. And if we can reach the Council before the Dominion destroys us, we can use it. Cole looked at the fleet surrounding her world. She thought of her children, her grandchildren, the billions of lives depending on decisions made in the next few hours. How do we get there? She asked. Their ships will destroy anything we launch. The vessel will take us. It is faster than anything the Dominion has. But we need to move now, before they realize what we are planning. Cole made her decision in seconds. She was not a woman who hesitated. Choose your team, she said. I will handle things here. Director, if we fail ... then we fail fighting. That is what humans do. Thomas gathered 6 others. Marcus Webb, the historian who understood politics and power. Nadia Okonkwo, the pilot who had already proven her courage. Dr. Elena Vasquez, a xenobiologist who might help them understand alien minds. Commander James Thorne, a veteran soldier who could protect them. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a linguist prepared to translate anything. And finally, Director Cole herself, who refused to send others into danger she would not face. 7 humans boarded the vessel, eternal as Dominion weapons powered up. 7 humans trusted their lives to a ship older than their species. And as the vessel vanished into hyperspace, leaving the Dominion fleet grasping at empty space, a new chapter in galactic history began. Humanity was going to the Council, ready or not. The galaxy was about to learn what one small species could do. The Galactic Council headquarters floated at the exact center of the Milky Way. It was a station the size of a small moon, built around a captured black hole whose gravity kept it eternally stable. 12 billion species had contributed to its construction over millions of years. It was meant to be the heart of galactic civilization. For humanity, it was a courtroom where their survival would be decided. The vessel, Eternal, emerged from hyperspace 3 hours ahead of the Dominion's fastest pursuit ships. It had crossed half the galaxy in the time it would take a normal vessel to reach Mars. Thomas Reed watched through a viewport as the station grew larger, its surface covered with docking ports and communication arrays and structures whose purpose he could not begin to guess. "They know we are coming," the vessel said. "The Council has been watching since you left Earth. They are curious. Curious species survive longer than fearful ones. Will they listen to us?" Thomas asked. "They will listen. Whether they will act is another question." The 7 humans were escorted into the Grand Tribunal by beings made of crystal and light. The chamber was overwhelming, designed to humble any visitor regardless of species. Marcus Webb had studied the ancient amphitheaters of Greece and Rome. This was something else entirely. A sphere of impossible size, filled with representatives of civilizations humanity had never imagined. High Arbiter, Thessalon, materialized at the center of the chamber. Its mercury form caught the light from 1,000 different sources. "Species designation human," it announced. "You have requested an emergency audience with the Council. You have arrived in a vessel that has not been seen in 3 million years. You claim rights and privileges that have never been granted to any species in recorded history." Marcus Webb stepped forward. His voice did not waver. "We claim nothing that was not already given, High Arbiter. The architects left their legacy for an inheritor. We are that inheritor." Ambassador Korath's image appeared on a massive screen. The Dominion had sent a diplomatic delegation at maximum speed, arriving just minutes after the humans. His compound eyes burned with fury. "This is absurd," Korath declared. "These primitives have stolen an artifact of immeasurable value. They have constructed elaborate lies to justify their theft. The Council must not be deceived." "Then let the evidence be examined," Marcus replied. "We have nothing to hide." The Arbiter convened a verification panel. 17 species with no stake in the outcome would review the evidence and render judgment. Representatives from worlds that had existed before Earth's sun ignited would determine whether humanity's claim was legitimate. The deliberation would take 30 hours. During that time, the Dominion fleet remained positioned around Earth, waiting for permission to strike. Thomas Reed was called to testify before the panel. He stood alone in the center of an amphitheater that could hold millions, facing beings whose forms of life he could barely comprehend. The questions came from every direction. How had he found the ship? Why had he not reported it? What had he done during those 15 years of visits? Thomas answered simply and honestly. He told them about the energy readings that had drawn him to Crater Daedalus. He described the breach in the hull, the dark corridors, the feeling of presence that had kept him coming back. "I brought flowers," he said. "Music, pictures of Earth. I talked to the ship like it was a friend." I know that sounds strange, but 2 million years of silence seemed too cruel. Even if no one was listening, I thought it mattered. The weave mind, a being that existed as a distributed consciousness across thousands of synthetic bodies, asked the question that mattered most. You expected no reward. You believed the ship was dead and empty. Yet you continued visiting for 15 years. Why? Thomas was quiet for a long moment. Because kindness should not require a reason. I was not trying to gain anything. I was just trying to be decent to something that seemed forgotten. Is that so hard to understand? The weave mind processed his response. It's thousands of B. Odie's flickered in silent communication. It is very hard to understand, it finally said. Most species would have claimed the discovery for profit or power. Most species would have cut the ship apart to learn its secrets. You did none of these things. You simply visited. You simply cared. I did not know anyone was watching. That is precisely the point. While Thomas testified, Nadia Okonkwo worked aboard the vessel Eternal. The ship had granted her limited access to its sensor systems, and what she found made her blood run cold. A Dominion stealth vessel was entering Earth's solar system. Its trajectory led directly to the vessel's former resting place on the moon. The Dominion was not waiting for the trial to end. They were moving to seize the ship's abandoned landing site, hoping to find technology or evidence they could use to undermine humanity's claim. Nadia had one fighter craft capable of interception. If she engaged the Dominion vessel, she would be attacking during an active trial. Humanity's case would be destroyed. They would be labeled aggressors, and the Council would have no choice but to rule against them. But if she did nothing, the Dominion would plant false evidence. They would claim they had found proof of human theft. They would twist the truth until it served their purposes. Nadia made her choice. She launched without authorization, pushing her fighter to its limits as she raced toward the intercept point. The stealth vessel detected her approach and tried to evade, but Nadia had spent 20 years flying combat missions in Earth's defense forces. She knew how to chase. The pursuit wound through the asteroid belt. Nadia herded the Dominion ship away from its target, forcing it into a pattern that would make its intentions clear. She did not fire. She did not need to. The Dominion pilot grew frustrated. After 3 hours of pursuit, he made a mistake. He fired first dot. The shot missed Nadia's fighter by meters. Her black box recorded everything. Timestamp, weapon signature, origin point. She limped back to Earth with her evidence intact. The Dominion had attacked during a council trial. They had violated the most sacred laws of galactic civilization. The recording was transmitted to the verification panel within the hour. Ambassador Korath's diplomatic immunity was revoked. Dominion security forces were detained. The council chamber erupted into chaos as species that had feared the Dominion for millennia suddenly saw them exposed. The Weave mind spoke into the tumult. The panel has reached a preliminary conclusion. The evidence supports the human claim. The architects did leave a legacy, and they chose wisely. But Korath, even in custody, managed one final transmission. His voice echoed through the chamber, cold and hard. Do you think this changes anything? Our fleet still surrounds their world. Judgment or no judgment, we will have what is ours. And when we do, we will burn their planet as a lesson to any species that dares challenge Dominion supremacy. The threat hung in the air. The Council could rule in humanity's favor. They could condemn the Dominion's actions. But without the power to enforce their judgment, words meant nothing. Marcus Webb looked at Thomas Reed across the chamber. They both understood what came next. Earth was still in danger. The trial had been won, but the war was just beginning. And 17,000 Dominion warships were waiting for the order to attack. Thomas closed his eyes and spoke silently to the vessel Eternal, hoping it could still hear him across the vast distance. "We need you," he whispered. "Please, we are not ready to die." The ship's response came instantly, filling his mind with a warmth he had felt countless times in the cold corridors of the moon. "You are never alone. Thomas Reed, you never were." The Galactic Council issued its ruling at dawn, Earth time. High Arbiter Thessalon's Mercury form rippled with the weight of history as the judgment was announced. The claim of species designation human is hereby recognized. The legacy of the architects belongs to them by right of selection. The seat reserved for 3 million years is now filled. The Dominion is ordered to withdraw from human space immediately and submit to investigation for crimes against galactic law. Cheers erupted across Earth. Billions watched the broadcast, hardly daring to believe. Humanity had been recognized. They had a place among the stars. But Ambassador Korath's response came within minutes. The Dominion recognizes no authority over its affairs. We built our empire through strength, not words. We will take what is rightfully ours, and no council of cowards will stop us. The fleet attacked. 17,000 warships opened fire simultaneously. Earth's orbital stations vanished in the first volley, vaporized by weapons that turned matter into energy. Satellites became debris. The planet's defenses, so carefully built over decades, lasted less than 4 minutes. The bombardment began. cities burned. Mountains cracked. Oceans boiled where the heaviest weapons struck. Millions died in the first hour. Millions more fled underground, praying for salvation that seemed impossible. And then the vessel, Eternal, arrived. The ancient ship emerged from hyperspace directly between Earth and the Dominion fleet. Its hull glowed with patterns that had not been seen since the dawn of the galaxy. Its presence was broadcast on every frequency, visible to every ship, every station, every watching eye across 1,000 worlds. "I am the vessel Eternal," the ship announced. "Last guardian of the architects. The species known as humanity has been designated our inheritors. To harm them is to harm our legacy. To destroy them is to declare war on what we built. Consider your next actions carefully." The fleet paused. Weapons cooled. Even the Dominion hesitated to fire on an architect vessel. Legends held weight even among conquerors. But Korath had crossed too many lines to turn back. His compound eyes saw only the prize he had sought for 6,000 years. The technology inside that ship could make the Dominion rulers of the entire galaxy. Nothing else mattered. "Fire," he commanded. "Destroy it all." The barrage was overwhelming. Missiles by the thousands. Energy beams that could slice moons in half. The combined firepower of the greatest military force in galactic history focused on a single target, the vessel. Eternal did not move. It did not deploy shields. It did not fire weapons of its own. Instead, it simply reached out with technology that predated the Dominion by 3 million years and removed every piece of ammunition from existence, not destroyed, removed, erased, from the fabric of space-time, as if it had never been, across 17,000 ships, weapons powered down. Magazines showed empty. Torpedo bays contained nothing but air. The entire Dominion arsenal had simply ceased to exist in a single instant. "This is mercy," the vessel announced. "The first lesson of inheritance. Power without restraint is not power. It is tragedy. Your weapons are gone. Your fleet is intact. Go home. This is the only warning you will receive." The Dominion fleet retreated. For the first time in 6,000 years, their advance had been stopped. For the first time in living memory, they had been humbled, but victory came at a cost. The vessel Eternal systems had been dormant for 2 million years. The defensive action had drained reserves that would take decades to replenish. The ship could not maintain this level of protection indefinitely. Director Cole convened humanity's leaders aboard the vessel. Scientists and soldiers, politicians and priests. They gathered in a chamber that had once hosted the architects themselves, listening as Thomas Reed translated the ship's words. "You have your seat on the council," the vessel explained. "You have official recognition and protection under galactic law. But law means little to those with power and no conscience." "What do we do now?" Cole asked. "You learn. You grow. You become strong enough to protect yourselves. I was left to teach you. The architect's knowledge is vast beyond measure. But knowledge without wisdom destroys as often as it saves. How long do we have? Decades, perhaps. The Dominion will not attack directly again. They will work in shadows, seeking allies among species that fear change. They will wait for my systems to weaken. You must be ready when that day comes." Thomas spoke up. "What happened to the architects? Where did they go?" The vessel was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, something like sadness colored its voice. They became something greater. They left this dimension to explore realities beyond imagination. But before they departed, they made a promise. When the inheritors are ready, when they have proven themselves not just worthy, but truly noble, the architects will return to meet them. And if we fail, then the galaxy continues as it has. conflict without end, species rising and falling in cycles of violence. The Dominion and others like them, clawing for power while the stars grow cold. We believe you can break that cycle. We believed it 2 million years ago, when we watched your ancestors take their first steps across the grasslands of Africa. Marcus Webb's voice was quiet. That is a heavy burden to place on one species. Yes, but you were not chosen because you are perfect. You were chosen because, despite all your flaws, you still believe that kindness matters. That compassion has value. That caring for the helpless is not weakness, but strength. The vessel's lights pulsed gently. In 3 million years of watching the galaxy, you are the first species we found that visits the dead out of respect rather than profit. That brings flowers to empty tombs. That speaks to things that cannot answer, simply because silence seems cruel. Thomas did those things, Cole said. Not all of humanity. Inherit our power. You are meant to inherit our hope. Use it well. The chamber was silent. Across the galaxy, trillions of beings processed what they had heard. Some wept, some trembled. Some refused to believe. Ambassador Korath's successor, a younger Dominion official who had been sent to observe, laughed bitterly. Compassion. The great secret of the universe is weakness. This changes nothing. Thomas Reed turned to face him. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber. You ruled a third of the galaxy through fear and force. You built empires that spanned thousands of worlds. And what do you have to show for it? Species that hate you. Allies who abandoned you the moment you faltered. A legacy that crumbles even as we speak. He gestured to the vessel behind him. I visited an empty ship every week for 15 years. I brought flowers and music to something that could not hear me. And now I stand here, speaking to the entire galaxy, delivering a message that has waited 3 million years. He paused. Which of us built something that mattered? The Dominion representative had no answer. The assembly ended in silence. Representatives returned to their worlds, carrying the message with them. Some would embrace it. Some would reject it. Some would need centuries to understand, but the seed had been planted. Thomas returned to the Vessel Eternal for his last visit. The ship's systems were dimming now, its purpose fulfilled, its energy finally fading after 2 million years of patient waiting. Will you truly be gone? Thomas asked. I will sleep again, perhaps for another 1,000,000 years, perhaps forever. But what I was will live on in what you do. Thomas placed a flower on the altar, a simple white lily, preserved in crystal. He had been bringing flowers since he was 34 years old. He saw no reason to stop now. Thank you, he said, for everything, for waiting, for believing in us when we did not know we deserved it. No, Thomas Reed, thank you. You reminded us why we chose to hope at all. The lights dimmed. The ancient ship fell silent. Thomas stood alone in the darkness for a long time. When he finally left, he did not look back. There was too much work to do. 50 years later, a young girl named Maya found a strange artifact on a distant colony world. It was buried in a cave, covered in symbols no one could read, made of materials that did not exist in any database. She was 12 years old. She had no special training. She had only curiosity and a kind heart. Maya did not report her discovery. She did not try to sell it. Instead, she brought flowers from her garden. She played music on her tablet. She told the artifact stories about her family, her friends, her dreams for the future. She did not expect anything in return. She simply thought that something buried alone for so long deserved some company. Deep within the artifact, systems that had been dormant since before the architects transcended began to stir. Sensors detected the offerings. Processors analyzed the patterns. A single light blinked on. The architects had left more than one test scattered across the galaxy. More than one legacy, waiting to be claimed. And humanity was not the only species being watched. But that is a story for another time, out in the darkness between dimensions. The architects observed. They saw the seeds of compassion spreading. They saw species that had fought for millennia beginning to question whether there might be another way. They saw hope. And somewhere, Thomas Reed's legacy lived on. Not in monuments or statues or grand achievements, but in the simple act of a young girl bringing flowers to something she thought could never know. Kindness ripples outward. Compassion echoes across time. That was the message humanity never expected, and they were only beginning to understand what it meant.